Turn off mute. Testing, testing. Pierre, you want to see if you could hear?
How about let us know.
I'm not all right.
See if you can hear us both, guys.
I don't know. Try. Testing, 1, 2.
That doesn't work on yours.
Oh, hold it. Do you have this up here
But don't turn the other
reset?
mics off.
for the
I can hear you
headphone?
guys fine.
Yeah.
But
Look for
now-
headphone.
Hit reset.
Yep, hit reset. Now listen to it.
Anybody
Testing,
home?
1, 2, 1, 2.
Okay, that's good.
Yep.
1, 2, 1, 2.
Both ears or one ear?
Both.
Both.
Both?
Okay. Okay. you go.
Testing, 1, 2, 1, 2.
1, 2, 1, 2.
Louder in one.
One.
So
That's okay. They can hear.
Who's louder?
They can hear.
all right, I'm flipping it over.
You're louder.
I think.
It don't matter.
Hold on. Hold on. You ready?
You're on.
Like that for the background. You're
Go to-
on.
Go to camera.
Yeah, she's got it. We got it. It's all like, yeah, we got it. Hey, that's the thing of doing things live, guys and gals. I really appreciate those of you who stuck it out with us, who were keen enough to grab the hidden messages to lead you to where we are right now. And for some reason, if you get in late during the course of this webinar, that's okay. It's going to be recorded. You'll be able to see it. A few little things I need to do on the back end, but I'd say probably no later than the end of day Monday. You should be able to go back to this any old time you want on the Motor Race Training page where you originally registered. So again, if you didn't see it, I apologize that you missed the live one. But as always, and I'll share that information in a bit, if you need any kind of help, any kind of questions, you can always reach out to myself or to my good friend, Mr. Truglia, who's with us here tonight, of course, to answer those questions for you. All right. So let's go ahead and get started. I think I've wasted enough of your time. I don't want to waste any more of it. Tonight's topic, today and tomorrow, braking systems redefined. First, we have to give, of course, credit and compliments to the folks at Duralast for making this possible. I want to encourage you guys, if you haven't given a good look at the Duralast line, I encourage you to do so. They've made a lot of improvements. I use them on my personal vehicles and have had very good success with their braking products. And we'll talk a little bit about that today, but not here to give you a sales pitch. Before we begin, webinars last somewhere around 90 minutes or so. It really depends how much talking we do and how many questions that we get. Of course, we've been known to talk quite a bit longer than 90 minutes.
That could happen.
If you have any questions, type them into the chat box, and our good friend Pierre Respo will be vice president of TST. We'll be looking at that. And of course, we always have the lovely Doreen taking care of the behind the camera action for us. And one of these days, we'll get her in front.
Well, they may have seen her at the big event.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's where she's up.
Absolutely. You, of course, here on the channel and look at it right on YouTube, you're not going to get the link for the handout. It's basically a copy of the presentation slides that we have here. If you want that, you can put that in the comments on the YouTube channel. I'll review all that stuff on Monday, or email me. I'll be glad to send you a copy of it. No big deal. Okay. And if you're registered, if you registered for the webcast and you didn't see it or didn't catch up onto it, I want you to remember that that Motor Race Training site that you registered on to see this originally has a lot of other great resources available to you. All the webinars that we've done are on that. Yeah, and there's a boatload of them. After 10 plus years we've been doing this. So there's a lot of content on there that is available to you. Make sure you take full advantage of it since you have that open to you.
And one other reminder, there is a delay. So if you ask a question,
yes,
be prepared that we don't see it instantly. I think
maybe a minute or two.
Maybe a minute or so. So we'll get
freak if we don't answer it right away. Right. They are being monitored, so we will answer. If Pierre can't answer it for you right away, then he'll bring it to our attention and we'll give a shot at it. Right now, the first thing I want to show you guys here on this slide is what we're so used to, and that's the brake system that we've been accustomed to servicing for many years.
Many years.
You know, it's a foundational hydraulic brake system Disc front usually, drum in the back usually. Of course, now some cars have disc on all four wheels.
Yeah.
It's been many, many years since there were drums on all
Right,
four wheels.
right.
Thank God.
we typically see now mostly cars that come in here all four disc.
Sure.
But
Sure.
drums are still, we just had this the other day, many of them use drums inside the rotor. It's a rotor drum with the rear braking shoes in there for parking brakes.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah,
you
very
still
good.
should know how to do it. Wheel cylinders are still an issue. They should always look at those boots, see if they're leaking, and make sure all the pivot points, usually 3 on each side, plus the anchor parts, the
Right.
top and the bottom, all need to be lubricated properly to prevent the problem.
Absolutely. Now, the main reason, and this is not a foundational brake webcast. What we're trying to make a point here is that what we're going to show you is some of the braking systems that are in play on a lot of new vehicles and coming right around the corner. What we really want to stress to everybody who watches this webcast is that even when it comes to routine services, and brake services are one of the top services that you perform in your shops on a daily basis, even these routine services are not routine anymore. You've heard G and I say many times here recently that the vehicles you're working on are the most highly complex, highly technical marvels of engineering that the OEMs have ever been able
Put
to
out. Oh, yeah.
produce.
Unbelievable.
And they're doing things so much differently now. The nuances make a very big difference in how you approach the service and repair, even if something is what you might consider as simple as a brake system. It's not so simple anymore. And if you've heard me say, if you don't fix it right, you fixed it wrong. There's no gray area in between. What we really want to strive home is that whatever service you're getting ready to perform in that shop, if you've never done it or researched it on that particular make, model, year vehicle in your bay, you need to take the time to, as my good friend G likes to say, RTF.
Yeah, RTFI, read the freaking information. And don't forget, take these out. When you're doing brakes, and many times people are not used to drum brakes or whatever.
Yeah.
Take a picture of it and do one side at a time and compare it. You got a primary spring, a secondary spring, hold downs, and springs could be a problem as well. If they're overstretched and those shoes are not being pulled back right, you could have some issues there. Look at the complete brake system and do one side at a time.
And we'll go back to the next slide there for me, folks, if you will. And this is essentially a foundational hydraulic system, again, that you're used to. It is using the principles of maximizing and increasing force through a hydraulic system. It's a matter of proportion based on how big the plunger size in the master cylinder, magnifying that force by the time it gets to the back of the square area of the pistons. We can do all the physics and math and all that stuff, but really what I want you to understand is that when you apply that force and those pads are applied to that rotor, it's some method of friction. Some method? Yeah, there's two that you need to be aware of that helps us bring that vehicle to a stop by converting that energy of motion into heat energy, right? And dissipate that heat energy. And everything has to be working right for the brake system to do its job.
And one thing, go back to that a second, Pete. This is a dual piston caliper. So you don't find that on many cars. Most of them are sliding calipers, which we have a caliper right there that's sliding. This is used more on performance cars nowadays.
Yes.
Years back, the 4-piston caliper GM spent big money on, first put on the Corvette, and then they put it on the Impala and the Caprice just to make the money back. Problem there, a lot of Euro cars, we do a lot of Euro cars, you got to be careful with them. They come in halves. So it is a different way of doing a brake job.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Even those small little seals in between those halves.
Oh, yeah.
If you don't follow the procedures right, if you don't torque it down correctly, if you don't follow the order, you're going to have a problem, because you're talking about the hydraulic leak, which means no pedal, which means no stop. So this is, and I've seen as many as 6-piston caliper designs on some high performance vehicles.
The other thing, Volvo comes to mind. When you think you're going to do the furthest wheel away for bleeding, right rear, left rear, oh, no. you better go into service information like one of our other sponsors, Pro Demand, and look in there and see what they say, where to bleed first and how to do it. I mean, we use a bleeding machine, but sometimes, in all honesty, you may have to pump the pedal. You may have to use a scan tool. Okay. So you need to make sure you have service information, whether it be Pro Demand, All Data, Motologic, Identifix, whatever one you like.
Yeah.
You need to use service information.
And again, we cannot stress that point enough. We really can't. To look in for the service procedures, what special tools may be required, if a scan tool might be required. Are there any technical service bullets and releases that apply to that system that you might want to address? You know, that's one of the things that always kind of got me too. You know, people who don't get advised of their recalls, for example, they're waiting on that letter that may or may not come, but you have that access right there at your service information system. Why aren't you looking for that for your customers when they come in? So you can say, hey, have you had this done? This applies to your vehicle. You know, you could be doing them a very real service that they don't even know about.
Yeah.
But that's just one, again, benefit of taking the time to do a little bit of that homework.
Yeah, and one that pops to mind, a Gen 3 Prius. There is a bulletin that if you open the door, if you do certain things, that brake system is not going to be right. And they want you to use the Toyota tech screen to do a proper bleed on that system, or you will not have proper brakes.
Yeah.
It's a bulletin from Toyota Motor Company. And there's many other cars out there. The Teva system, you know, Mercedes and some Fords and other cars use. You better read that service information before those calipers bite your fingers. And what do I mean by bite your fingers? They may apply with the key out of the ignition. There is a special procedure that you need to know and read about. So service information is key. You know, doing a brake job, people just throw pads on. We'll get into that. Lubricating points,
right?
All important to do the job right.
All right, but the need for more advanced systems has become greater and greater and greater over the years. You know, I don't know if you guys knew this or not, but nearly 80% of all automotive accidents are caused by driver neglect, inattention, not paying attention to what they're doing, not being familiar with their system, whatever the case might be.
Oh, you mean doing this, Pete?
Yes, exactly. That's certainly
see that
one.
all the time.
I've seen, you know, women put makeup on in their car, or I've seen
butter a bagel,
men reading the newspaper and eating a bagel. It's just, and so it's a safety issue. And one of the first systems that came to be to address that issue was ABS, A-lock brakes. And what was the purpose? Well, if a person back in those days, if you had a panic stop in a system that wasn't equipped with ABS, if you're an old guy like me, we remember that very, very well. You know, it's very, very possible for you to lock up a wheel, break traction, and end up sliding where you really didn't have a lot of control of where you were going. So that was a whole lesson in itself of learning how to control these skids and slides. I remember practicing in the parking lots when I was a kid, and aren't doing them for fun, but we're not used to doing it anymore. And the ABS was a system designed to help alleviate that by monitoring the wheel speeds of all four wheels. And if it noticed that there was a speed change in one, an impending lockup at one, then it would pulsate the brake pressure the driver was applying to prevent that wheel from locking up.
Yeah,
that was the whole idea.
What they call a dump valve. But, you know, a lot of people when ABS first came out didn't know how to drive it right. In Michigan, the state police had to go through special training because they thought if they took their foot off and pumped it, it would be better. It's ABS works with your foot on the brake, holding it there and looking at the wheel speed sensors and then either applying or dumping the brake fluid from locking the wheel.
Yeah, and I was going to comment on the same thing. You know, when I was taught how to drive without ABS, that's exactly what we were taught to do, was to pump the pedal if you found yourself in a slider situation, which is essentially what ABS is doing, but a whole lot faster than we can. And knowing which one to pulse was a big thing to keep the vehicle under control.
Definitely.
But as you pointed out, and many of you may have experienced this for yourself, have you ever really experienced a full ABS brake stop? Try it. Find a safe place to break it to some speed and then push that pedal as hard as you can towards the floor.
Hold it. Don't let go.
Hold it. Don't let go. You're going to feel the pedal pulsing under your foot as that ABS is working. And that seemed to me was the weak spot, because the driver would feel that under their foot and go like, oop, I have to take my foot off, and now the ABS isn't working. So there was a whole lot going on with it. It was a good, it was a good step forward, but it wasn't perfect. Right.
And newer ones don't seem to pulsate the pedal as much as the older ones.
Yeah.
The older ones, you really felt the pulsation. You may hear one tire like almost skidding and off and on. And if you actually looked at the wheel, it'd be doing this.
Yeah.
You know, stopping, going, because it's taking the fluid in or releasing the fluid. There's the
now,
new thing.
The whole suite of systems that are designed to help literally take the driver out of the equation, or
And sometimes
the ADAS
it needs to be.
Oh yeah, I mean, originally, again, like I said, 80%, and this includes, I mean, think of the injuries and fatalities involved in these motor vehicle accidents caused by driver inattention. So services like forward collision avoidance, automatic emergency braking, these have had a very real impact on reducing those numbers already. And I don't remember the model year, maybe it already is. Some manufacturers, of course, include this ahead of schedule, but this is going to be one of the very first systems required by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration.
I think it's another year away, if I'm not mistaken, but you could even get an inexpensive car, a Hyundai or, you know, a low-end Honda or GM or whatever. They all have the systems on there.
Right.
And one of the things, you know, prior leading up to this, we did have ABS as the first step. The second step was traction control.
Yeah.
Okay. And this just puts everything together. It has taken that ABS technology, it's taken the traction control technology. Now with cameras, radar, linear, well, it is building it into a system that is working faster than you can.
Absolutely.
The other night we had on TST, we had Scott Brown doing an ADAS thing. It was very, very good. And, you know, I was telling Pierre as we were watching it, I remember my first car with it. I was on the Major Deegan right near Yankee Stadium. And here comes a guy with a bike. Before my foot was able to hit that pedal, I would have hit this guy. It went in and saw, and I was like, whoa, I hadn't experienced it before. It moves faster in milliseconds, 1,000 milliseconds or 1 second, faster than our brains, eyes, and feet could ever move.
Absolutely.
That's what this system does. And like you said, saving a lot of accidents and probably a lot of lives.
Right. And that's the
Question.
rule.
It's actually a little unrelated to this part of it, so you might do it later. But
Sure.
The question was, some light trucks have a dual hydraulic pneumatic brake system. Could you tell us how that works?
A dual hydraulic pneumatic. Now, if whoever answered that question, please clarify. I'm not familiar with anything like that on a light duty truck. If you're referring to like medium or heavy duty vehicles, please clarify that for us.
Yeah,
We'll
it
attempt to
would
answer
probably
that.
be a medium duty.
At
And when he
least.
says hydraulic, now we're talking about fluid assist, like from power steering. So Hydro Boost. Okay. Hydro Boost, that with a regular braking system rather than vacuum booster.
Right.
We're doing that. Now, I had a experience in my RV. If you lose the Hydro Boost, let me tell you, you know, here I got a loaded RV and I was like,
No worries.
I hope the freaking steering wheel didn't break, because I took all my couple of 100 pounds and pressing on that freaking brake pedal, and then you couldn't steer. So Hydro Boost has always been a little bit of an issue. If you have any leaks, that is its main. You still have foundation brakes, we should say. But just like your vacuum power booster, you're going to have that extra boost of pressure where you don't need to apply so much pounds per square inch.
Right. Exactly. It's a force multiplier.
Right. It's a force.
Yes.
Right. Exactly.
Yes.
That's how brakes work, actually.
Yes.
Very good.
Now, and going back to your time frame, you know, you may have heard that a lot of ways to space yourself when you're driving on the road between vehicles is the 2-second rule, right? That your vehicle in front of you should pass a mark and you don't get there until 2 seconds later. Well, why is that? Because that's how long it's going to take you to react if that guy finally slams on the brakes. Is to give you enough room to react and bring your own vehicle to a safe stop. And come on, guys, how many of us stayed 2 seconds behind the vehicle in front of us? I'm on the highway coming over here, man. And it's like, no. It's like being on the NASCAR track, man, and trying to get the draft.
They're
on the
drafting
car.
you. Oh, that's what they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
No doubt. But the good thing, I have plenty of cars that have ADAS in it, and it really warns you if you're getting too damn close.
Yes.
Okay. And that's the nice part, to tell you, hey, back off, because if you're doing even 30, but 40, 50, 60, you're going to have a couple of call-ins or more, depending on the condition of your tires, your braking system, the whole bit. You know, and how many people do brakes wrong? And what do I mean by that? They pad slap.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you have a new pad going on a surface that's not 100% true. So you're not going to get 100% of that braking action, the pounds per square inch, the whole force thing, and you're not going to be able to stop in time. And then tires that are bald as my freaking head, well, that's going to be a big problem in stopping as well.
Sure. Road
You
condition.
need, and people that don't bleed the brakes, okay, this is all stuff we're going to get into. There's a right way to do a brake job, and there's a wrong way to do a brake job.
Yeah.
This
Question.
guy actually clarified it. It was an Isuzu, was a
Oh,
truck,
okay.
2 to 6 ton Isuzus.
Yeah. Okay. I tell you what, and that's big trucks. I'm not a heavy duty expert, but if you drop us an email, we know
To look it
somebody
up.
who is.
Yep.
You know,
we
we
do.
can certainly refer you to him, and he can answer that question for you. All right.
Yeah.
All right.
And again, that's where service information comes in, familiarity with the system. I haven't worked on an Isuzu truck in years.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
One thing I want to clarify here as well, when we talk about ADAS, and I know a lot of guys who they've heard the term, but they're still not really clear on what all this is. This is a whole family of systems, as G alluded to. We've got the braking, ABS, TCS portion of it, but the brakes are also used for other parts of the system, the automatic emergency braking, the forward collision avoidance. Some vehicles have rear collision avoidance. So when you're backing up to prevent you from hitting something, some have pedestrian avoidance.
And that's
so
a biggie now.
That's a biggie now. It's a European Union really jumped on that a few years back. That's a real big thing
Yeah,
now.
BMW did a big thing on that, actually.
Yeah, active cruise control is another place that's going to take advantage of the braking system to perform its functions. And it's all because of the cameras and the radars that are used in these systems, so the vehicle can actually see the world around it. Okay, I'm going to talk about that a little bit more when it comes to this slide.
Scott brought up on a Nissan. Some Nissans, rather than using a forward camera, and he found this out by doing some investigating, they were using a rear camera to actually calculate what's going on in front. Just a different type of system.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
you know, always look at the system, identify what the system has. You know, glass issues that he went over the other night, and I experienced that myself. Windshield problems, dirt on sensors, snow if you live in a snow area, not in your area, but you know, and we haven't had much up here, but you know, there's places with it.
Now, here's something, guys and gals, that you're watching. I can't stress this enough. I've talked to dozens and dozens of technicians around the country over the last year or so. When it comes to ADAS and their systems, I find very, very few that are working on the system components or diagnosing problems with these systems, or even calibrating the systems. And what I mean by calibrating, well, that means that if you've done something like you changed a component and you have to teach it which way it looks is correct. It's critical that these cameras and radars look exactly where they're supposed to be looking, down the center, and right exactly the right angle is supposed to be. Even a minor variation is critical to how they function. Now, okay, Pete, that's fine. It's not a problem for me. I'm not taking any of that stuff off the car. Are you doing alignments? Are you doing tire work? Are you doing steering and suspension component replacements? These are just a few examples
Sure.
of the common everyday things you're doing in your shop that affect these systems and how they see the world around them. And if you're not making sure that they're calibrated when the service information tells you that they must be, and you send it back down the highway, you are responsible for what happens after that.
You bet. And let's not forget, even changing a headlight, changing a radiator or a condenser, you move something in that front bumper grill area,
Yeah.
you better have that thing calibrated.
Taking, as he pointed out, if you're pulling off the front grill, you're pulling off the front radar sensor, Oh, I put it right back on where I took it off, Pete. I tightened it right down. It's according to spec. It is not looking the same way it did before you took it off. I'm sorry,
bet.
it's not. And I really don't want to try to scare anybody, but let's just say, for example, here's the example of automatic emergency braking. Here's a pedestrian crossing the street. The driver of that vehicle hits and kills that pedestrian because that system didn't work the way it's supposed to. Well, of course, the motor company's getting sued. Whoever built the car is going to get sued. You're going to get sued for your personal liability in it as far as the driver goes.
You bet.
But, and as far as, I don't know if it's happened yet, but it's only going to take one attorney smart enough to go like, well, have you had your car serviced recently? Well, let's pull up those service records. Oh, the windshield was replaced? Show me the calibration work.
Right.
Oh, you had some front end work that required the sensor to be removed? Show me the calibration paperwork.
Yeah.
If you can't do that, Mr. Technician, oh yeah, you're just as responsible as that shop owner is. And that shop owner with the how many $1 million liability policy hanging on his shop, it's gone, dude.
Right.
It's gone. You're
Now
not going to
here-
have a leg to stand on.
Now here in our shop, we don't have the room to do ADAS calibration because you need a certain amount of room. So we get customers came in, and one recently with a Land Rover that needed suspension work. And we looked it up and told them it had an ADAS system on it. We need both of your keys. He goes, what do you mean? Well, when it's done, the only way we're going to do this job is we're going to tow it from here to the dealer to get calibrated. And the guy thought we were nuts. We showed him service information and said, that's the only way we're doing a job. And we had to figure it in there. Because if you don't do that, and that guy gets in an accident, like you said, and they come back and it says right in service information, you change suspension parts, going to change the way it's looking at the road.
Mhm.
And that could be fatal nowadays.
Yeah. And I know kind of really painting a really bleak picture, but here's some other things you might consider. And
And
you
it's
might
opportunity.
hear from your customers. Well, I don't know what it is, but my car keeps pulling to the left. You
Mhm.
check the alignment. There's nothing wrong with the alignment. What's wrong? It's not looking in the right place. The car thinks it's going off the highway and is trying to correct using the lane assist system.
Exactly.
You may have a vehicle that has automatic collision avoidance and it's starting to slow down and brake on the customer while there's really nothing anywhere near them because it thinks that car in front of them is actually closer than it is.
Exactly.
These
Or
are all examples.
you may encounter a drivability problem. Customer comes in and says, my car doesn't seem to have right power at times. Well, it could be applying the brakes because of the ABS or the ADAS system, I should
Right.
say, not functioning as designed because someone jerked with the system.
Yeah.
I mean, there are many, many things that could really throw you off course. That's why you need to RTFI, read that
Yeah,
freaking
please.
information.
Please.
Never, ever try to go in on something and think you know it. Read. You know, you got to get paid to do that. People come in to diagnose a problem. Well, hey, if you got to look stuff up, it's way better than taking a wild ass guess and ripping something apart and not fixing the vehicle.
Guys, if you have someone in your shop that is fond of saying that, well, I've been doing this for X number of years, there's nothing you can tell me about fixing X, Y, Z. Stay away from that person as far as you can because they are so far behind the times. Anything you think you might be learning from them is going to be nonsense. You really have to, and you're here. I'm kind of preaching to the choir. You're here trying to learn something more on what you may have originally thought. Again, it was going to be pretty boring, but you know, that marks the difference between someone who wants to maintain their professionality versus someone who just doesn't care, quite simply. But
Very true.
I would like to add something to that, if you can hear my voice.
yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, yeah, of course, because I'm loud. I have over 55 years of experience, and I like to tell people the three most important words in my vocabulary are, I don't know. There's no shame in not knowing something.
Yeah.
You need to look it up.
And you
That's
certainly
right.
don't know what you don't know,
Exactly.
right? Especially when it comes to new
And see,
technology.
we said that on the Isuzu. We don't know it. We could find out for you.
So what are you looking at in the future? Let's take a look at a few examples. Eventually, there won't be any direct link between the driver and the vehicle systems. Toyota has already announced that they're going to start production of steer-by-wire, a true steer-by-wire system, in the next 1 or 2 model years, which means that, yes, we have electric power steering, but we always have a direct link between the steering wheel and the front end components. That's going away. You're going to have that Nintendo PlayStation wheel that's going to be a sensor to a computer telling the motor and drive wheels which way you want them to turn. There's no direct connection. The same thing is going to be occurring in the braking systems. Now, thanks to Continental, this is just one kind of a vision of where they see that braking system developing. What they have here is a new type of master cylinder. This is both hydraulic and electronic. The ABS module is contained in the same module. So it's a building platform, a building block that's going to allow them to make that transmission from hydraulic to steer-by-wire over a period of time. And this diagram shows that in this case, yes, it's still all hydraulic. We still have all the hydraulic lines controlling all 4 wheels. Now, the thing is, we can start to control these, but this system, we can control the wheels individually. So the ABS system, TCS system, lane assist, anything that ADAS systems might need is all contained in one component. Now, their next mode is to slowly start to weed away from that. Now we're using both. We may have electric drive motors to control the calipers in the rear. So there may be hydraulic and wire, both available to control the braking systems. And then finally, we'll go to the next step. We'll go to like electric motors in the rear to control the rear brakes, still using hydraulics on the front. And then finally, the hydraulics go away. It's just wires leading front and back, and that's going to be your braking links.
I've seen that system at the SAE World Congress in Detroit. Full, no hydraulics, because, as you know, they want to do away with oils, lower oil and environmental stuff, right? Your footprint per se. And the full electric system, electric could work quicker than hydraulics. They had full electric calipers, and they also had a caliper that was 360 degrees. It went all the way around the rotor, all electric. And the speed of this, now probably why it's not out, I remember seeing iDrive when Pierre and I were on the old STS board, and that's got to be 20 some odd years ago, okay? It's amazing the stuff they have. Sometimes things don't come out because of money. And when Pete just said that steering, well, think about the throttle. APP, there's nothing there but wires.
Right.
There's a sensor, wires, and a motor. That's what all this stuff is going to.
Absolutely.
Fluids will be gone down the road. And with the advent of more electric vehicles like Tesla and other companies, you're going to have one electric motor per wheel, and that's going to do everything. Because now you're going to get regen right at that wheel to slow up and do most of your braking.
Yeah.
Everything's going to be electric.
Yeah. And we're going to talk a little bit more of that near the end of the little presentation on the effect on EVs and hybrids. Another one that's out there is the Brembo Sensify system. Here's me testing on a Tesla Model 3. Again, it's a straight brake-by-wire type of system. And again, the beauty is it can control the 4 wheels independently or together or in pairs or however it needs to do to maintain control and keep the vehicle tracking where we want it to track. So this is what's coming down the pike, and you're not going to bleed this one like you're used to bleeding systems now, are you? It's going to take a whole new set of skills to be able to handle and diagnose those systems.
Yeah, you better have the right scan tools.
Yep.
You've all now experienced for many, many years. Volkswagen, I believe, was the first with the electronic parking brake, and people freaked out, like, how am I going to do this? They have, scan tools. The Otis at the time was able to do it, but the aftermarket scan tools or specialty like scan tools that just do the brakes to make sure they put them in a service mode.
Yeah, absolutely.
You'll see more and more of that.
Yes.
Question is, with control by wired systems, can they be hacked?
I think that's a great question. A big concern has been, it's been around for a little while now. That's where you got the secure gateway module came from, was how they could be hacked into. The manufacturers are working very hard to provide for cybersecurity, right? But there's always another guy that's a little bit smarter and finds a way around it if they really, really want to. Is it possible? I'm not going to say it's not.
Yeah,
right?
I would say it's possible,
but even today, because of the ABS module, at least the foundational hydraulic system could be hacked and operated. So I don't know if that would be a concern for us. That's brighter minds than us are going to have to figure that one out. But
Right.
as long as that's connected to the internet via the cellular network, there's a gateway in. And it really depends on how the manufacturers provide for the security protocols. And there's always constant development on that. There's always, and I was at the Equipment and Tool Institute conference last year where they had some cybersecurity specialists on, and it's constantly responding, changing, because there's as long as there's bad guys in the world, there can be somebody who tries to
And
find a way
that's
around
why
it. So,
the gateway module, that Jeep, and you could find this on the internet real easy. A couple of guys hacked the Jeep.
Yeah.
And that's why Chrysler has a gateway module. You got to go, if you're using an aftermarket scan tool on a Chrysler product, you should go to autoauth.com, AUTH.com to register your scan tool and register up to 6 guys. I think it's still $75, at least when I renewed it. I think it was like in October. But they need that. Now,
Yeah.
every company is going to do that. Like Pete said, they're talking about this. They're going to do it. They're going to make sure, just like Nissan, they did it on their factory tool and have not released that information to aftermarket. So
right.
2021 and up Nissan Infinities, you may
Right
not
into
be able
that.
to get in with your scan tool.
Yeah, and what we're not allowed to do is to get the computer to. We're not allowed to tell the computer to do anything. So it's not just you can access data, but you can't clear the codes because you can't tell it to do anything. You can't do any programming because you can't tell it to do anything. You can't use the bidirectional controls because you can't tell the computer to do anything unless you have permission. And that's where you got the auto auth for Chrysler, but they're not the only ones. Ford's had it for a while, but they're kind of nicer about it. They don't require a third-party authorization. If you have a Wi-Fi enabled scan tool, that's all in the back end somewhere where you can't see it. Renault, I know you have to actually go to the factory to get authorization. Like you mentioned, Nissan
Infiniti.
you're going to see more of that. And this is a side note, but again, you guys are gals, you're here because you want to maintain your level of professionalism. You're looking to take it a little bit further. You're the future leaders of our industry and what we do, because you care about what you do in your everyday working life, right? So I'm going to throw this out to you. You need to be more aware too of who's trying to tie you up, tie your hands, and be able to do your work. And more, you're saying it's hard to get the service information that you need to do the job. We're lucky here. We're able to access factory information, factory tooling. There are countries around the world that no. They have a Haynes manual. That's it, right? So you're lucky to have that. But behind the scenes, they're working to pull some of that back. If you go to, I guess, the Federal Register or wherever you find the information, there's something called the Repair Act. And there's a few others as well in Congress that are helping to guarantee it's actually consumer oriented. So the consumer has a right to decide who fixed their car, but that means you have to have the information, right? So that's part of this legislation. Not, I don't know how you feel politically, that's up to you. But this is one thing that I really think you should be involved with and have your say in. Write your congressman, write your representative, say, we want this bill passed to make sure we can continue to earn a living. And
currently there are some parts companies that are sending out free things to some of their shops to put in the consumer's car to say, you bought this car, you own this car, you should have the right to the software.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, just like you buy a computer, well, you have the software on it and no one's taking it away. And if you needed to do something, you can do it. But there's a lot of sticky situations, and the Right to Repair Act, you may want to get involved with.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. All right. So if there's no more questions on this we talked about already, I want to go and touch on some things that will help you get the most out of the brake jobs you're doing today for your customer. Some very commonly overlooked things. The very first thing, as I mentioned in the beginning, the way the braking systems work, whether it's going to be electric or hydraulic, is that we have to have friction of some kind to change that energy of motion into heat. What I want you to understand, though, is that there's more than one kind that your customers' vehicles are using. The oldest of the two is abrasive friction, where we're applying that brake pad and we're letting that brake pad grind down as it grinds on that rotor to bring the car to a stop. Very abrasive, a lot of wear and tear. More effective, though, is adhesive or adherent friction. Now, this is a little different. A lot of ceramic brake pad systems use this. What this does is when you first put the pads on the brand new rotor, for the first 100 miles or so, there's a layer of pad material being transferred to the surface of the rotor. And now it's kind of like sticky paper rather than a truly abrasive or grinding type of action.
Right, like
and
the
it
metal
helps the
on
brakes
metal.
last a lot longer and operate a lot more effectively. So if you're aware of that, it's going to come into play with some of the things that we talk about in terms of the steps to take care of. Top of the line, not common service mistakes, not cleaning the brake slides and hardware. We'll take a look at that in a minute. Not lubricating the guide pins. Believe it or not, number 3 on the hit parade, not installing the brake pads backwards. That can happen.
Oh, and leaving clips out. We've seen a whole bunch of stuff here.
Now,
Scary.
number 4,
Shims.
not measuring the rotors. Now, hey, I know if the rotors are cheap, we're not going to bother to measure anything. We're just going to put new rotors on the vehicle. That's all fine and dandy. But if you decide that you're going to reuse the rotors, it's critical that you measure them and that when you finish your resurfacing, that you make sure that they are indeed above specification before you put them back on the vehicle. And as a side note, if you are going to reuse the rotors, way back when, I know GM was one factory that said as long as there's no major damage or pedal pulsation complaints, you could just put pads right on top of that and continue on down the road. That's okay if it was abrasive friction, but if it's adherent friction and already has that layer of material in the rotor, the new pads are never going to bed in properly, and that's going to cause you issues going down the road.
And don't forget, if you're resurfacing the rotor, it needs to be washed down.
And how should it be washed out, Mr. Truglia?
Not with brake clean.
No, not with brake clean.
With
Hot soapy water.
Soapy water, just like you do a cylinder
Yeah.
when we used to rebuild motors.
Hot
right?
soapy water is absolutely one of the best solvents you can get, and you can take. I've done the white towel test between brake clean and hot soapy water, and brake clean doesn't cut it. You're having all those small millings left behind. Because I mean, think about it, guys. When you're surfacing that rotor, you're just taking one long thread off, kind of like an old LP album. So you have all these little hills and valleys in there, and in those valleys are little remnants of what you've been cutting. That's going to embed in the brake pads, and that's going to cause you problems.
Yeah, you could be on the dark side of the moon. You know what I'm saying?
Not properly torquing the brake components when you're putting back together. Bracket bolts, the guide pin bolts, the caliper mounts, all of these have to be torqued to
But
specification.
hang on, I want to say one other thing.
Yeah.
The rotor, if you removed it and replaced it, did you clean the hub up properly?
Yeah.
Because that's a biggie where if you don't clean it up and there's debris and you try to get that new rotor on, it is never going to seat fully to where it should be. And then you're going to have problems.
Yep. And I'm glad you brought that up. Let's go talk about that also a little bit more. You want to make sure that you clean the hub face. If you're reusing the rotor, you got to clean the inside of the hat to make sure that is also clean.
You bet.
I got a great tip from Pierre earlier that he used to do. He says it was Krylon clear engine enamel. He would get the hub nice and clean, and then he would just kind of whiff that paint over the surface. We're not trying to paint it. We're just trying to put a very thin coat to help protect that from rust formulation down the road for his customer. Of course, we up here in New York State, that's a big issue, for these guys. Me, not so much, right?
Now, we use copper anti-seize on the hub. Make sure you don't get it on the studs. That way, you're not getting any rust building up behind it. Next time you do a brake job, it comes off.
Comes off easier.
But do not put a load of it on.
Right.
We use a brush and make sure it's not all gooky. Anything on the threads need to be cleaned off.
Yeah.
Don't oil threads. Don't put anti-seize on threads because that changes the torque spec, and you don't want a nut and a wheel coming off.
Yeah. Another thing too, that if you're replacing or resurfacing the rotors, when you get them back on the vehicle, before you put the caliper and pads in place, do yourself a favor and make sure that it's running true. Get a dial indicator out.
You bet.
And make sure this within spec. If it's out just a little bit, it's going to lead to the development of a pulsation problem. If you understand what causes brake pedal pulsation, it's not so much unevenness in the rotor as it is uneven wear of the rotor over time. If it's on a little bit of an angle and those pads are kind of hitting just the high spot every time it rolls around, you with me? It starts to wear that part off. So now you have a surface that's like this, and that's where that pedal pulsation starts to come into play. That can be caused by just very small amounts of variations in between the hub face and the hat. Hub bearings, very common for leading to this cause. And no, guys and gals, you're not shaking the wheel to see if there's play. If you feel play in a hub bearing at the wheel, that thing's been shot a long, long time. The only effective and correct way to do that is to check the hub bearing with a dial indicator. I believe, remember from our Timken webinar, I think that spec was like 10,000ths of an inch for maximum variation. It's not much.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, the other tip too, if you're machining rotors and you're machining it on a off the vehicle one,
yes,
there's a big difference than using a Pro Cut that's on a vehicle.
Right.
Okay. You know, when I used to use the Pro Cut, problem is here, most of the steel is pretty beat up. That's the problem. Pro Cut does a real true thing. It's BMW has it, GM, the Ford dealer here has it. If someone comes in with a new car with, you know, rotors that maybe in 10,000 miles, the guy feels a pulsation, that is their first step. They put a dial indicator on it. They do it, and it's on the car. Why? Because it's matched to the hub, and that's the big thing.
Right.
It's matched to the bearing. When you use a outside brake lead, you got to be very careful. Did you use the right cone and stuff? And years back at all my shops, we had, you know, Amco brake leads, and those things were good. But are they good enough for today's vehicle?
Yeah.
Because the way they actually work is going to be totally different. And again, depending on the cone you use. How many people don't put the cone on right, use the wrong one, don't tighten things right, the tips are messed up,
Blades are worn out.
blades are worn out, you're going to have a problem.
Yeah. So, and if you do mount the rotor, all you need to do, and I used to keep like these oversized washers, and I would put a couple under on the lugs, and then use the customer lug nuts, 3 of them, to secure the rotor to the hub, so I could check it with the dial indicator, make sure the run out was in spec. But if it's not, that doesn't mean that you got to throw stuff away. Just take and make a mark, and then take that rotor and clock it over one, and check it again, and then do that again.
It's like balancing a tire.
Yeah, yes, the same thing. Yeah, with anytime you have to remove that component. Hey, number 9 on the list, hanging a brake caliper by the hose. God, I've seen that so many times. Not a good idea. You know, you see the braided line doesn't really show anything on the outside, but it's that capillary tube that's really running the fluid through it that ends up being stretched into a very narrow point that could actually work as a check valve, so the fluid can pass through under pressure,
but not go back.
And now you have a brake a caliper that's not releasing. And even if you replace that caliper with a new one, the problem is not going to go away.
It's the hose.
It's because it's the hose.
That is so common. I can't tell you how many times I've seen that. We had one guy work here that no longer works here. He would love to do that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you're ruining that hose. That hose, like you said, inside, it's not rubber. It's like a plastic type of tube. And if you kink it, when you step on the brake pedal, yes, fluid would go through, but returning it. So that means you are leaving more residual pressure on the brake pads and the caliper. Not a good thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
The same is true when you're switching the calipers and you have to disconnect the brake line. Okay. We don't want to lose a lot of fluid in the process, do we? Don't grab your needle nose channel locks to nail down the hose. And again, you just ruin the hose. And I know they make these little special roller type that you can use.
We have these little doohickeys that go in there.
Yeah. But what I used to do was take some valve stems and shove them in the hole in the banjo bolt. And that would keep the fluid leaking long enough for me to go ahead and make the switch.
Yeah, we have these little things that are like a clip thing. Yeah, you can just like clip on and prevents it. And before that, we used to use the old Thexton. Thexton used to make things for vacuum. That's when you pulled lines off. You know, when you're working on one of those Honda carburetors with 9 million lines. You know, I have like 3 sets of them, so we would use that.
Yeah.
But these new things are great. I think I forgot the name. What's that company with the S that makes brake lines and all that?
Oh gosh,
or something.
Can't think of
the name of it, but it works great.
I'd like to add a little professional tip. What I did for years, and you may not be able to do it on some of these always alive cars, I would use my brake pedal depressor from my alignment machine to push the brake pedal down part way so that you're past the port on your master cylinder for the reservoir. And then when I unscrewed the brake line from the caliper, I had a bunch of caps made that I would screw back on the line. And I
Yeah.
made the caps off of the old brake hose fittings, the ends. Cut
Yeah.
them off, weld them up. You got yourself free caps.
There you go. That works.
It's always a good thing.
Some other pointers too when you're dealing with these systems. Well, we'll talk about the next one. Number 2, not inspecting the piston dust boot. If I could, I'm going to move over here for a minute.
Yeah, those dust boots are super important.
And here we got a few samples of stuff from our friends at Duralast. Of course, you probably already know these are available exclusively at AutoZone. So I encourage you to visit your local AutoZone retailer. And can you see the boot here? Okay, you see the little rubber boot. Now, of course, the piston's retracted, so the boot's nice and pleated up, nice and pretty on this brand new caliper assembly. But when it's in your shop and the pads are worn out, it's pretty well fully extended. Number 1, take a very good close visual inspection of that boot. Any damage, any sign of dry rot requires that the caliper be replaced. All right, this is not a fluid seal, but it protects the seal that is.
The one that's underneath it in the bore.
Right. And that seal around the piston is actually twofold. It's called a tapered seal. So the part where it actually contacts the piston is a very, very small area. What happens is the piston's extended, that seal flexes, and it acts like a spring. It helps pull the piston back off of the rotor and the pad when you release the pressure behind it. So if there's anything that gets in there, it's going to lead to corrosion in the piston, damage to that seal, potential leakage, sticking calipers, components that it doesn't need to be. And that also leads me to the next part. Be very careful when you're retracting the piston. Do not put a big old C-clamp on it and force that thing back in there. You catch air inside that.
And you may cock that seal.
Yeah, you may cock that seal. You could cause damage to the seal. And more importantly, if you force all of this fluid back up the lines, you could take some little bit of sediment or debris and lodge it into that ABS module, cause a permanent damage to the solenoid or a solenoid that can't do its job. And now you're replacing an ABS module down the road. Always just crack the bleeder. So that will release that pressure.
Exactly.
That's another tip. We talked earlier about the damaged line causing the caliper piston to stick. So you can either have a problem with the caliper piston or a problem with the line. If you have a caliper that's seized and it's not allowing the wheel to move, all you have to do is crack that bleeder. If now the wheel's able to be moved, well, it's the line and not the piston. Okay, so this will give you a way to distinguish between those two problems.
And we have special tools that go in there to see pounds per square inch what the piston's actually doing, because sometimes you don't realize that one piston's going to squeeze harder than another.
Sure.
There's a problem inside that caliper.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also, you see the way this caliper is cleaned and reconditioned with special paint on it, anti-corrosive. There are some cheap calipers out there that look rusty. They don't go on in my shop. It has to be something that is coated like this with new boots here. Very important. Your pins and boots, if those are not lubed, special, not just some crappy grease, you need special brake grease there.
Yes. Do not use a silicone paste in here. There is special caliper grease to use on these pins and slides. Make sure that you remove these, you clean them, make sure you inspect the bore, and then relube them when you put this back together. It's all critical to that caliper's function. And what we're talking about here, these are the these are the little things that make a professional brake job. One that's going to perform like the original brakes performed, for last as long, no noise, no pulsation development. These are all those little bitty things that you know because you're a professional, that the guy in the backyard swapping pads or just throwing pads at it doesn't know.
Or the $49.95 brake job. Now, a couple of other things. These have torque specs.
Yes.
The ones that connect to the knuckle, torque specs, and clean them. And many times we use the blue Loctite. Okay. And that way you're actually protecting the threads from getting anything in. Okay. And the bolts are not going to back off.
Yeah.
The bleeder, rubber little caps that you go, you don't need those. Yes, you do.
Yes, you do.
You better put them back on. Now we we stock bleeders because sometimes when a caliper, you got to open it up. You basically want to put a new bleeder in and a cap. Do not leave them off. And what we do on customers' cars, if we see their brakes getting low, you know, maybe they needed 2 oil changes from now. We always spray that area up with penetrating oil.
Yeah.
That way it comes out a lot easier. A little tip there too, use a 1/4-inch ratchet with a 6-point socket, a little hammer sometimes, give you a little tappy tap, go a little tight and a little off.
Yeah.
And thank God we don't really break them.
Yeah. Don't snap it off in there. That's just more of a pain.
Oh, when you
Yeah.
snap them off, you're pretty well
The
cooked.
question is, should I be doing a run out check every time I replace the rotors?
Yes.
Yeah.
Short version, yes.
And by the way, when someone comes in like your parts guy and drops the rotor box,
Send it back.
Send it back.
no, here's what we do. We put them aside and order another set. Because the little trick that we've seen happen to us twice, where we sent it back, the guy just went down the road and came back. He didn't go to the store. Delivering you the same thing, you're going to have a problem.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
Well, I think if you go to your AutoZone retailer, they won't do that to you.
Right. Well, hey, AutoZone's right down the block. You can drive there, which is pretty cool.
Oh, no. Okay.
Yeah,
And
be real
still
careful.
on the caliper guy, and to the question that was made earlier about replacing the, obviously this has gone another 30,000 miles. It's time for a new brake job. So yes, this is just one of those things that if you send it out in spec, you're not going to have any problems. That customer's not going to be back a month later complaining about noise or pulsation or issues. He's going to be satisfied with his work. And when he goes, well, God, the last shop that did my brakes, I was back there with all this squealing, and I take it to this guy. And now, man, these are great. It's been like 6 months, year, and you know it's still going strong. And guess where he's coming back again? Not
Yeah.
just for that, but everything
Now,
else.
now, one other thing, right here is a problem area. When you get these new washers, don't throw the old ones out. Now, of course, this bolt should be taut so you don't snap it in the caliper. But these washers, sometimes the crush washers, you're going to get a leak. If you get a bad pedal, a lot of times the new crush washers don't seem to work right. I mean, we do a hell of a lot of brakes, and many times we have to use the old ones, even after talking these.
Really?
Yeah.
That's a good point.
So, I
Interesting.
mean, you know, just the real world stuff. Sometimes things don't work the way it is, has nothing to do with the door last caliper. Okay. It could happen on anyone's caliper.
Yep.
It's just something I always keep them around because we've had plenty of times where, oh my God, you torqued it, you give it a little more and still leak in there.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
remember, any leak in the brake system, you're not going to have a good pedal.
Now, just as a little side note for your information, guys, again, I'm trying to sell you anything, but I know from the working with the folks at Duralast, they have 2 product line offerings. They have their standard Duralast offering, which is basically a reman, but everything is checked to make sure it's in line with OEM form, fit, and function. So if it needs to be done, it's done. But the Gold line is new. So if you really want to put the best that you can get for your customer, you know, you may want to consider that line instead. The other thing I want to point out is you can see there's nothing in here for the pads, right? So it comes with the reman kit. I won't pull that out of the disc, out of that box, but it also comes with their pads, everything you need, you know, the clips,
The shims. And by the
everything
way,
you need.
don't forget to lubricate the end right here.
Yep.
Okay. And notice these have shims right on it. Very important. No shims, you're going to get noise and squeaks. Also, the squeaker to when it gets down.
Yep.
Make sure you put the pad into the right side. Okay. Sometimes they're marked left and right. A good pad is also like tapered.
Yep.
Okay. Because if they're not and you got a square edge, you're definitely going to have a problem. And cheaper pads, people always want to go cheap. You're driving a 3,000, or your customer's driving a 3,000 plus pound gun. Okay. Brakes are one of the most important things.
Mm-hmm.
You got to be able to stop. And stopping, you need high quality products to put in there.
Yeah, absolutely, especially now. And then last thing we ever show you, here's the just example of their Gold line rotor. See, oh, that looks kind of weird, Pete. That's I've never seen a gray one. Well, that's because it has a special coating on there to help protect it against corrosion and rust. So it's just a plus. Now these are the ones that I used on my wife's vehicle, along with the ceramic pads. That would be an adherent or adhesive style friction. And I took about 100 miles. You can see this got nice and seated in, and this got nice and seated in, and we haven't had a problem with it since. So I was very pleased with the results of that. Again, just a note for this line, if you're, like we talked earlier about towing, I tow, so I need something a little heavier duty to handle the heat. There's a separate line for that available. If you service your local special service vehicles, police, fire, EMT, they do have separate line designs for that kind of application. So they have a number of choices for you to choose from when it comes to selecting your brake parts. Right?
True. All right.
All right. And I think we're getting here towards the last few things we want to talk about. This is something that should be done, again, as part of your normal brake service. Before you send the vehicle back to your customer, you need to break in the brake pads. You need to bed them in. Very, very important to their long-term service. And there are two ways you can do it. One is called the 30-30-30.
But before you go there,
okay,
when we're done with a brake job, you may want to use a torque stick when it's up in the air, torque the wheels with a torque wrench on the ground.
Oh, yeah.
Drive the vehicle, and we do it around our building here, and then retorque them. Then we do one of these procedures.
Yeah, good point. And that's anytime you remove
Because you
that
can
wheel.
ruin that new rotor.
Yeah, anytime you remove the wheel, you want to torque that.
Always
that wheel.
torque. Not you see some guys.
Yeah, no.
It's like, dude, come on.
Which is another good side note real quick, and then I'll get to your comment, Pierre. I've kind of made the switch to electric guns. And one thing I noticed real quick, because it happened to me in my wife's car. It sounds like it's putting the wheel on tight, but if the battery's weak, so is the torque at the other end of it. And you always follow up with that torque wrench for that very reason, right?
No, okay. Definitely. Well, I mean, we use torque stick, torque wrench when it hits the ground with the brake on.
Yeah.
Or someone holding the brake. You don't want it to move. That changes the torque. And we drive the vehicle and retorque.
Yeah.
Because you will see some change depending on the wheel structure.
Pierre?
My comment is, I've seen this many times, people don't actually tighten the lug bolts in the correct order.
Oh.
You don't start at the top lug bolt, right? Maybe you want to get into that a little more.
Star pattern, but yeah, not going
at the
from
bottom so you don't pinch it on the hub-centric ring.
Yeah.
Yeah, because where is the weight really being applied on the tire? At the top. That's where all the weight's being held from, at the top.
Yep.
So we got the 30-30, that's 30 gradual stops from 30 miles an hour with 30 seconds in between, so the brakes can cool down a little bit. Or you can go with the 60-20-10. That's gradually slow down from 60 miles an hour to 20 miles an hour 10 times with moderate pedal pressure without coming to a complete stop. And the very last brake application, again, get it up to 60 miles an hour, run it for a while to allow the brakes a chance to cool.
So you mean,
right?
Pete, you just don't go out there and bang it out at, 40 to 60 miles and hit the brakes and
Get that full ABS on there? No.
Not good. Not good for braking. We usually do the 30 because of the roads around here.
Absolutely. And that depends on, of course, your location, where you can do this safely. And that kind of goes to another recommendation I always try to make to techs. Set yourself up a test drive area near your shop. Something that has a little bit of mix of everything you can. Smooth roads, nasty, bumpy roads, gravel
hills,
if you can, hills, curves. Something that gives you a chance to kind of put the suspension in vehicle through its paces. And of course, within the speed limits and the local.
Yeah, don't tell them
Pete
Pete and G told you that you can go as fast as you want.
Don't hit 60 on
I could help
the school zone. And of course, it depends on where you're at. Like our good friend Mr. Anello over there in Jersey. It's like he ain't getting up to 60 miles an hour anywhere too easily.
No, I mean we have that problem here. We do some of the back roads. We have a test drive track.
Mm-hmm.
With hills a whole bit. But many times the traffic is too hard to. We definitely can't do this.
Yeah,
there's no way in hell.
One more thing. You may think, of course, that here we kind of maybe see it in the corner there. We have our Tesla behind us. EVs coming along. You hear a lot of noise about EVs are coming. The EVs are coming. Depending where you are is going to be depending on how many you see. you're over on the West Coast watching, well, this has been on for you guys for quite a while. Here up in the Northeast, you see a lot of that. If you're down there with the good old boys like I am, we're not getting up off of our big old 4-wheel drive gas or diesel dualies anytime soon. But there's still a market for hybrids and EVs, and I'm sure that all of you watching have heard the term regenerative braking more than once, and this is really how EVs stop. For example, the Tesla, it's almost like driving a golf cart. As soon as you lift off the pedal, the regenerative braking is so aggressive that it brings the vehicle to damn near complete stop
in that mode.
Without me touching the
modes.
pedal. Even if I touch the pedal, the vehicle is not going to actually allow me to operate the hydraulic brakes, the foundation brakes, unless they're needed to complete that stop. In this case, the way this vehicle is set now, that's maybe like the last 5 feet.
Yeah.
So I don't roll in downhill or up into the car in front of me. But so that's all it takes. So, well, in that case, you're going to see, and I know G has, like with the Prius hybrids and other hybrids they service here at his shop, 100,000 miles.
Oh, easy. My Prius has 200,000 original pads.
Original brake pads.
But you have to you got to take it off. You got to clean the hubs. You got to clean the rotors. You got to lubricate the calipers. Now, on my Chevy Volt, I didn't have a lot of miles on it. It sat around. Well, without doing that, I had to buy new pads, okay, and new rotors. The freaking caliper stuck from sitting there not being lubricated.
Mm-hmm.
Now, didn't have, I think that one had 20,000 miles on it. And it ticked me off to go, damn, I didn't do what I recommend on my own car, but it sat there for probably 3 years or longer, which is an issue.
Which is why I want to bring to you guys' attention is there is still a need for brake service, even on these vehicles. It's more preventative maintenance than it is a repair. But yes, I think that Prius is like every 15,000 miles, they recommend that those systems be inspected, lubricated, and cleaned so that if it ever does become needed, the foundational brake system is 100% ready to go.
At least once a year, really do that on any hybrid.
Yes, and
those brakes, like Pete said, minimal on an average car, maybe not on your Camry taxi cab in New York City. You're going to be 100,000 plus miles, and a year is more than enough to tell that customer you need this maintenance on it. Besides other things, but we're talking brakes here.
Yeah, absolutely.
And make sure those tires are rotated. A lot of people don't rotate tires. Make sure the wheels, if they went to a place that did well, not only the nut is bad, the stud has been stretched, okay, needs to be replaced. And sometimes the wheel starts, you can see cuts in the wheel. Now that wheel, under stress could have a problem. Doreen and I were just driving the other night home, and what was there? A car with the wheel off. Now someone didn't tighten it right. Didn't torque it correctly. It wasn't like a broken bearing or whatever.
Right.
The wheel came off the car.
Wow.
So careful.
Yep. Another step we want to get into here before we start wrapping things up here, and that's brake fluid. Depending on where you are, I think like in California, if it's not specifically recommended in the service interface, you can't do it. Some manufacturers, Europeans, for example, I know they recommend it, but most domestics don't have it listed as a
Honda
service procedure. So it really depends. But if you're in an area where you can actually look at the fluid and make it some kind of service consideration, it's not the color of the fluid that makes that call. Okay, the days that water was a problem, it's long gone. That's not the major problem. Now it's copper is the indicator that we use to determine what the condition of the fluid is. And you've probably heard me preach before on coolant, how important it is to check that every time your vehicle comes in for service. Same thing with the brake fluid. It's the additives in the brake fluid that protect against corrosion in the system, to lubricate components. This is what starts to degrade in the brake fluid over a period of time. And there are other factors that can affect how fast that happens. So there are strips available that measure the copper content, which is an indicator of how much corrosion is going on inside the system. And if it exceeds 200 parts per million, that's an indication that the fluid has reached the end of its useful service life, and I have no problem recommending a service on that fluid.
There's electronic testers.
Yes, there are electronic testers that you can use that actually apply a voltage
Voltage.
and measure the resistance to gauge how much moisture is in the system,
Yep,
but it doesn't
that's
say
the
much
moisture.
about copper.
Yeah.
And the other thing that came up at not too long ago at the MAP which is the Motorist Assurance Program. They kind of set independent standards for service and repair, and they went by copper standards for many, many years. I think it still officially is, but they do recognize that now. If I flush the system in, well, I got rid of all the copper. So how am I going to tell the next time around? Well, we can still do that. It's using, just like we do with coolants, a pH test, an acidity test that can give you an indication of the fluid. And I think there's one or two manufacturers of the test strips that offer that type of test strip, and that's the one I would encourage you to use in your shop.
Yeah, well, we always do here in our shop. First of all, if you're doing a 2-wheel brake job, you're still bleeding all 4 wheels. We use a flow dynamics pressure bleeding machine, and we get all the fluid out. Everything is out of that system. That way there's no air, because people, you could have cross directional, left front, right rear, yada, yada, yada. You don't know what type of system's on there. You do a brake job, you bleed it from all 4 wheels, make sure there's no air in there.
Yeah.
And, there are companies like Honda and the Euros. And what brake fluid are you using? We use .34. Okay. .4, high performance, like on my Corvette. You put .4 in, you got to be careful. You got to take that brake fluid out once a year, because it is going to pick moisture up. To give you a warning on that. So we buy the best brake fluid we can get. It's a .4 rating. The difference between 3 and 4 or buying some cheap fluid is the boiling point. When you heat the brakes up, what's that European one?
They're using that's Pentacin or
Pentacin, Ate. That's
But
it.
you also
We
have to
Ate.
watch for low viscosity on that the Europeans recommend for their ABS systems. Low vis.
Good point.
SL6
Good point.
in Ate.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
Good point.
Ate is what we use, on the performance cars.
Yeah. And
So like in an M series or a Vet or whatever, that's what's in my car.
And that's where I really want, again, Pierre just made a perfect example of how important it is to do your homework, look the information up for the vehicle that you're servicing every single time. Because he pointed out, these certain models, they require a low viscosity brake fluid. You can't just take the can that's been sitting on your toolbox for the last 6 months and put that in the vehicle. In fact, you can't do anything with that brake fluid if it's been sitting on your toolbox for the last 6 months.
Do not buy gallons of brake fluid if you're not going to use it quickly. We buy I guess it's like a pint, quart size.
Yeah.
It's a quart size. But we do a lot of brakes. If anything, if a brake fluid bottle is around and doesn't get used, we dispose of the brake fluid into the oil drain and get that taken away.
All right.
Besides, you're charging for it. If you do it right, you clean everything up, you lubricate it. If you're going to do a $49.95 brake job, you're going to run into problems.
Yeah.
You really want to
ain't
get.
Nobody watching here, I hope.
Well, hopefully not.
Yeah.
There are people down not far from here that do that type of stuff.
Yeah, but they ain't watching.
No, they ain't much. Get what you're worth, right? Charge a fair amount. Use good products. That way you can back it up. We have a 2-year, 24,000 mile, no question asked. If something goes bad, we'll do the whole brake job, parts and labor for free.
Yeah.
Use quality, be safe. Remember, that's someone's life that you're responsible for. Brakes stop the car, and you need to stop. It's good to go, but hey, you got to stop.
And I'm sure if you were thinking, as there always is, that, well, hey, my competitor, like you said, your competitor down the street's doing these 49, 59, 95 brake jobs. There is a company, I don't see them much around my area anymore. That's all they did was brakes, and they were notorious for advertising these extremely cheap brake jobs and then nailing their customers once they got them in the door with some very expensive add-ons. You know what? That's no way to do business. Guys, don't worry about whether or not you're the cheapest guy in town. Worry about if you're the best guy in town. That's the key. If you take the time to explain the difference between what you're offering versus what they're offering to your customer and the advantages it poses for them, customers, to a point, they don't care about how much it costs. They want to know, am I getting value for what I'm spending? Am I getting more than what I'm giving you in return. That's what's going to get them to agree to what you want, what you're offering them. And again, when it comes to a safety system like their brakes, they don't want to take chances with them, with their families. They want to know that this is something that can be done, is done right. So
right. And if they trust you, our customers don't come in. Our brake jobs are not cheap. Okay. They're more on the expensive side, but we do things right, and our customers don't go, whoa, why is it that much money? You don't want that person as a customer. You got to sell yourself as a professional.
Yeah.
Dress the part, talk the part, do the part. And when they have a good experience, those brakes last, their car stops good, rather than, oh my God, they're on a pedal and it goes down to the floor. Check that whole brake system. Okay. Very, very important to do the job right. And no one will question you about price.
Yeah.
The question, what test strips do you use? I guess they need
the ones here, I'd have to go look at the bottle. I don't remember. Something with an S. There's a couple of companies.
Yeah, Phoenix, I think, is one company
Phoenix
that offers test
one.
strips.
We have Phoenix strips.
There's another
Something
one.
with an S.
AccuStrip.
Okay, but there's another
AccuStrip
company
is another
with an S
company
I
that
can't
makes
remember.
them. So there are
They
a few
make
on
a
the
whole
market.
bunch of stuff. They make
Yes.
brake lines.
I think AccuStrip is one of the few that offer the acidity tests for the fluid, brake fluid. So
that
all
one.
right. Any other questions?
Nope.
All right. Hey, look, guys, I am so glad that you were able to find us in internet land and join us tonight. God, I can't apologize enough for the issues that we had at the beginning, but I do thank you so much for hanging in there with us. And I hope that the time that you spent with us from the point we started on, you don't feel was wasted. I hope that you leave tonight with something a little bit more than you had when you got here. If you did, would you do us a favor and let us know? Give us a why in the comments.
Give us
and
a
let
why
us
that you
know
learned something.
that you learned something tonight and you enjoyed the time you spent with us. If you thought it sucked, it was a waste of your time, hey, we're big boys. We can take that too. You can type an N in there. That's fine. We learn from our errors. And again, as always, Mr. Truglia, it was a pleasure coming up here and hanging out with you for a while.
Pete, it's always good seeing you.
To Doreen and Pierre back there in the backboard.
Yeah.
Couldn't do this without them.
We missed you last month, but hey, we made it this month.
We made it this month.
For what? Over 10 years we've been doing this. Like Pete
Yeah.
said, don't forget to go to the Motor Age website there where you signed in. We've been doing this for years. There's plenty of videos there for you to look at and gain some knowledge. Also, we'll give TST a plug. There's over probably 400 videos, many of them real long. Someone just looked at a Wayne Colonna video, and another guy just looked at an old Mac Vanderbrink, may he rest in peace, and said, wow, that was really good info.
Yeah.
So
PSTseminars.org.
You bet. And we're here, like Pete said in the beginning, to help make your life easier, make your job easier, and help you make more money. That is our main goal. And again, without you, Pete and I wouldn't be here.
Yep.
And thank you again to Duralast. Without our sponsors, we can't do this for free. And I got to say, Duralast has done quite a few of these, as well as our other sponsors. We want to thank them again, because, without them, we do realize some of you are, buying tools and got to feed the family and pay the car payment and the mortgage. It's sometimes tight to go spend money on education, but if you don't update, you will evaporate. And, as we said many, many times, in the past 5 years, oh my God, the stuff that has come out on these vehicles. You need to be out there, read magazines, okay, Motor Age and others. Make sure you read them.
Well, not all the others. No.
Well, you gotta give everyone something. You learn from something. If you really want to know what's going on, I'll give SAE a plug. AE Automotive Engineering. Go to www.sae.org. It's not like Motor Age. It's not, hey, stuff in the bay, but it is stuff that's coming out and systems to help you understand what you're going to be working on maybe next year or the year later.
Yeah, you can actually be an associate member of SAE and get their magazine. I think it was like every month or so.
Every month.
With some really great stuff. And if you really want to dig into the nitty gritty, and there's some good friends of ours say we like to pick the fly shit out of the pepper. then go on to the SA website and look up the automotive handbook. It's the Bosch
Oh,
handbook.
yes.
It's a read, buddy. I mean, but I tell you, anything that has to do with automotive, it's in that book. I think
AKA the Automotive Bible.
the
I call it.
11th version
11th
is
edition.
now out.
Pierre was
Yeah.
showing me his digital version. I said, oh, I still haven't bought that yet. I'm on version 10, and I've had versions all the way back. That is one phenomenal book.
Yeah.
That definitely, it's a hard read, but it's good info. Definitely get
yeah,
that.
Yeah, absolutely. And well, if you go to Amazon, you can get the year prior version a lot cheaper.
Yeah, it's not bad, but I like the latest, greatest. It's not
Well,
all that
you're a
expensive.
national trainer, dude. You have to keep up to at 100% current data. You guys and gals and me, I'm good with up to speed from the end of last year.
Yeah, I absolutely love that book, the stuff they have in it. SAE.org, the Bosch Automotive Handbook. I call it the Automotive Bible. And you sign up as a member, you get a cheaper price.
Yeah.
And you get AE Automotive Engineering, that monthly magazine.
Yeah, some
So do
great
yourself a
stuff in
favor.
there.
Oh, it's great
Yeah,
stuff.
great stuff in there.
All right. Well, hey,
All right. Well,
thanks again, Pete, for coming up.
Man.
Appreciate it. So it was
Thanks
good
for
working
you
with
guys
you.
for coming out.
Yep, thank you.
From right here in gloomy Mahopac, New
Well,
York.
it's raining
It's-
today. Yeah, it's like 60 degrees. It's not bad.
Yeah, we needed
Yeah.
the water.
We'll see you next time.
Thanks. Take care.